In 2008, Beto Monfort underwent surgery after a heart attack that led him to a near-death experience. During this experience, he felt a profound peace and found himself in different realities, recalling that one of them, in particular, was not a pleasant place. The surprise came when he had to return to consciousness and found shadows trying to prevent his return. This experience raised deep questions about the connection between life, death, and consciousness. Such a powerful experience that even after leaving the ICU, he continued questioning for some time whether he was alive or dead. Hello, I'm Marcus, and it's a pleasure to have you here at Beyond the Life We Live. I hope you feel at home and absorb the lesson from the story we're about to share. By the way, leave a like and subscribe to the channel, as it's very important to us and helps bring more impactful stories to you. It all started on October 31st of that year, when Beto was on a peaceful trip with his family. Along the way, they stopped to drink water, and he started feeling strange. He saw his father-in-law as if he were moving away, and he quickly began to feel as though he were crossing a tunnel, losing the ability to move and becoming very weak, feeling intense chest pains. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, his family decided to take him to the hospital, interrupting their trip. In addition to the chest pain, Beto's right leg began to go numb until he could feel nothing, as if it were made of wood. He almost fainted due to the intense pain, but managed to reach the hospital before losing consciousness. At the hospital, he was initially ignored and misdiagnosed with a hysterical attack from nervousness, and sent home, still feeling great discomfort, even hearing a hissing sound coming from his body when lying down. The next day, he decided to seek another hospital and went through several tests. The doctors then noticed different blood pressures in different parts of his body, indicating the need for more detailed examinations. He was then transferred to semi-intensive care, where they continued to run tests, including an endoscopic ultrasound. Throughout this process, Beto dealt with severe pain and exhaustion, but the doctors still didn't fully understand what was happening. After several tests, the doctors finally discovered what was wrong with Beto: a type 1 aortic dissection. His aorta had not completely ruptured, which would have caused sudden death, but instead, an inner layer had opened, creating a parallel blood flow known as a false lumen. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, the doctors immediately took the necessary steps to start surgery. During the surgery, Beto remained conscious despite being sedated. He heard the doctors talking about him as if he were already dead, which terrified him. However, he was fully lucid, but unable to move. To cope with the situation, he tried to do an astral projection, a technique he had studied some time ago. Then he found himself in another environment, observing a still and silent medical team. The team communicated through his mind that they were operating on him while the surgery continued elsewhere. After that, he remembered fading away and waking up in a familiar place, his father-in-law's house. There, he heard familiar voices and sounds of nature, feeling a deep peace and a connection to something much, much greater. During this state, he perceived an intense light and warmth even with his eyes closed, which brought him a sense of comfort. The voices around him commented on his awakening and return to consciousness, but he also heard a voice warning him that if he looked at the light, he would not return. He decides that it wasn't his time and begins to return to consciousness, but the experience becomes distressing when he finds himself in a dark, gloomy place full of shadows. According to him, these shadows seemed like negative energies, and the voices said that he didn't belong there and still had much to accomplish.
He knows too much now.
No, it's fine. He will forget.
You don't understand. He can't go because he really knows too much, and now is not the time for him to return.
But he will forget.
In a moment of little hope, he surrenders his fate into God's hands, declaring,
If it's God's will, it's not my will or yours, but His.
After this moment, the shadows and the oppression disappear, and he feels a great calm and tranquility. After that, everything fades, and he slowly wakes up in the ICU. Confused about what was happening, he feels fragile and still uncertain if he was alive, dead, or in an unknown situation in an unknown dimension. This happened because during his recovery, he had experiences in which he perceived other dimensions and realities that we don't know. During this time, he witnessed a patient from the room next door getting out of bed and saying that it was his time, which he interpreted as someone passing away. He also heard voices of deceased people he knew personally, which left him with the feeling of being in that dimension, which to him was very similar to reality. This experience made him very nervous, especially when he noticed things that others didn't see in the ICU. Despite leaving the ICU after more than a month, the feeling of vulnerability and the constant need for his wife's presence continued during his recovery. In a conversation with his cousin and his wife's mother, he made a deep observation about his situation, wondering if he was alive, thinking that he had died, and was now thinking that he was alive. Later, his mother-in-law confirmed that there had been a critical moment during the operation when his heart stopped, even after attempts to shock him back. The doctors revealed to his wife that there was a period when he was very close to real death. This experience left a deep mark on him, raising questions about the nature of life, death, and consciousness as he continued his physical and emotional recovery after this traumatic event.